Now, you can skew the results of your exercise program by taking a bunch of anabolic steroids, right? But that's got to be enumerated as a variable, doesn't it? And I bet it hadn't been.
Yep, that's right.
Right?
Yeah, this is, your comment about your experience versus the standard approach is really valuable. Let me just add something to that, because the way that you expand the things that you can do as Mark Rippetoe with 40 plus years of experience, and expand it effectively while staying to the thing that you're actually trying to do, is exactly what we've been talking about this whole time. You distill the arguments down to their basic form. You build your arguments up from the first principles.
Yes.
And what you have seen over your years of doing this as a strength coach, if you're doing it the right way, should match. And it just and I say this to people all the time. In your case, it just happened to fucking work out that way because of who you are and the way you've approached things. It happened to work out that way. I don't think that you sat down at the age of 20 whatever and figured all this shit out. You just started
no idea.
Right. So it just happens that here we are today in 2023. And, for various reasons, the first principles in the model match what your experiences have been. And that's changed a little bit probably over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah,
or
a little
longer.
bit.
Right. But it all matches, right? And everything gets closer and closer to that model.
The phenomenology must agree with the explanation.
Right.
Or the explanation is not an explanation.
Yep.
And that's just all there is to it.
Yeah. So in teaching this to people, and especially teaching it to coaches, you don't have to have the 40 years of experience. I mean, obviously that's a very helpful factor, but you don't have to have the 40 years of experience. You definitely, sure as fuck, do not have to have the exercise science background. What you need to do is understand the first principles on a conceptual level, which are anatomy, physiology, mechanics, and then a couple of other things. The other first principles, and these are my, I don't know, you tell me what you think about this, but the things I always say, first principles are things that are difficult to argue with, right? They're irreducible.
Right. They're irreducible. They are irreducible.
They're hard to argue with. If I can't get an agreement from the person I'm arguing with or explaining something to on things like physics, anatomy, and physiology, like how shit works at a fundamental level, then we can't have any further discussion, right?
No, because we're not operating from the same database.
Exactly right. Right. So that's where your first principles are. Muscles work a certain way, physics works a certain way, or mechanics works a certain way, and then your anatomy, stress recovery adaptation works a certain way. So you start there, right? And then on top of that, we can add two more. Efficiency is the other one.
Yes.
Right? Because again, you can do all of the other ones in a strength training program and still be effective, but not efficient.
Right. If it takes 2 years when it should have taken 6 months.
Exactly right. So efficiency is the other one, and efficiency also in terms of movement. And then the other one is to get strong. That's the other first principle. So there's 5 first principles that are completely inclusive within starting strength. And that explains the whole thing, from the way the lifts are done, to the programming, to the rep schemes and the loading schemes. The entire fucking thing is built off of those 5 first principles.
Right.
You agree with that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And this is why we are perceived as dogmatic.
Right.
By some people, we are perceived as dogmatic because, once again, these first principles are irreducible.
Right.
You're going to argue with me about gravity?
Right. Or
you argue with me about force production?
Or you just don't understand how it actually works, right? So let's not have the discussion about how to squat if you don't understand balance.
Right.
Like, we got to start there. Like, we can't even have a discussion about this.
Right.
And this is where
the skeleton is a system of levers. You have to understand the principles of moment, force, and leverage before you can understand why we do the squat and the deadlift the way we do. Because the principles of leverage and the particulars of musculoskeletal anatomy have to be part of your analysis.
Right.
And if they're not part of your analysis, then we can't have a discussion.
Right, which is what exercise science fails to do. They look at one specific piece, if that,
If
right,
that.
and they're not looking at it at a first principles level. They're just looking at, here's some assumptions. Here's what we're going to do.
Right.
Let's test it, see what happens, and then there you go. You got a piece of evidence-based literature.
Oh, God, I dropped my membership in the National Strength and Conditioning Association in 2009 after having read their two utterly nonsensical journals for 20 years. And the literature's very bad. Literature's very, very bad. And the fact that our blue book is not heavily annotated from the strength and conditioning literature is what I would consider to be a good point.
Yep.
It's we argue from first principles and logic and arithmetic and things like that, not from badly done papers by graduate students.